Hi everyone, I'm Amy Moritz and welcome to another episode of Women in Power Active, an initiative of UR Sportswear where we talk to women doing really amazing, incredible things that we find very inspiring and that help us all live active, healthy lifestyles. And today, so excited to have Elinor Fish on with us to talk about mindful running. Elinor runs Run Wild Retreats, I knew I was going to mess it up. Run Wild Retreats, and also mindful running training systems. So Eleanor, welcome to Women in Power Active.
Thank you, Amy.
It's great to have you here, and I want to remind people who are watching us live on YouTube that you can tweet questions that you might have or comments to UR Sportswear. Use the hashtag #StrongWomen, and we'll find it, and we'll get to as many questions as we can at the end with Eleanor. So welcome again, and first, let's just kind of start with you at the beginning and tell us a little bit about, you've been a runner for 25 years, you've been competitive, you've done ultras, you've done a lot. So in your athletic background, just give us a little bit about where you started at, where you've come from.
Sure. Well, I think as a lot of young people, I really discovered running through high school and through my high school sports teams, and was really lucky to have a great coach in high school that got me interested in track and field. So I did those short fun races and also cross country running. And I grew up in British Columbia, Canada, and so we had a good sports program out there, and I really enjoyed being a part of a team. That was a big part of it too, was just to feel like a part of a team. And so I stuck with track and cross country through college on the west coast of British Columbia, and definitely got more serious about my sports there at college, and again really loved the team atmosphere and having a great coach. And so for me in the early years, running was really about racing and being competitive and pushing myself and really seeing how far I could go. And so I had a lot of success with that and really enjoyed it. But when I left college, it definitely left me wondering what I should do now. And I tried to do some road races, and those were okay. But it wasn't until I moved east into the Canadian Rocky Mountains that I really discovered trail running. And when I discovered trail running, it's like it opened up a whole new world to me that I didn't even know existed before that. And I discovered the joy of running up mountains and through valleys and exploring the Rocky Mountains in a way that most people don't get to see, because even hikers, will spend a day or a half a day and go a few miles, but as a runner I could go so much further and see so much more, and really love that. And I was also had a career in writing and communications, and so it actually opened a lot of doors for me in that I started to write about how much I enjoyed running in the Canadian Rockies and places I was going and seeing that way. And so that led me to a job with Trail Runner magazine as an editor. So that was the start of sort of my running and my professional career having a very close parallel, that's for sure.
And then what brought you to explore the concept of mindful running?
Yeah, well, that was a really interesting time in my life, because by this point I'd been running for almost 20 years and had done a lot of different events, because of course once I started with Trail Runner magazine, a big part of trail running is ultra running, and so I started to see what all these people were doing, running 50 miles, 100 miles, and I thought, well, that sounds really cool. I want to try that too. And it's not such a crazy thing to do down here in Colorado. There's a lot of those kinds of epic event. So I signed up for one. I signed up for the Leadville Trail 100, which is a pretty famous 100-mile race here. And so I finished that race, but it was definitely the hardest kind of running I'd ever done. You know, it's at high altitude, it's very long distance, it's nonstop for over 24 hours. And so, needless to say, that took a lot out of me. And the thing was, is after that race, I just I couldn't seem to recover. I couldn't bounce back. And I got really frustrated. And it wasn't like, now I can look back and say, oh my God, it was so obvious. But at the time, it wasn't totally clear to me just what a deficit that I was languishing in for months and months afterwards. Not only was I exhausted from the race, but I was really overwhelmed with a lot of other kinds of stress in my life. And I had a lot of job-related stress because I was moving out of the magazine and into a pretty demanding job in PR and marketing. And I also had a young son at home who also demanded a lot of my energy, and a family to take care of. So all these things together just left me really completely depleted and exhausted. And so I thought, how am I going to get my energy back? Because the thing is running used to be that thing that helped me manage my stress and give me energy, but I was so exhausted that I couldn't run, or if I did run, it made me more tired. So that led me to really start to understand how stress truly affects our bodies on all levels. And what I was really amazed to learn was that having a lot of emotional stress, or like job stress, that sort of thing, it has the same toll on the body as, say, like running a marathon. So, you know, in terms of inflammation and hormonal disruption and that sort of thing. And so I wasn't able to recover from that big race because I wasn't getting any rest. My body was on overdrive, as if I were still training for that 100-miler, even though I wasn't. I was barely running at all. And so I kind of languished in this space of being really exhausted for a long time, until I started to hear more about mindfulness and how mindfulness is really powerful in reducing the physical effects of stress. And before that, I didn't really even know what the physical effects of stress were. But once I understood that what was going on in my head was causing a lot of this fatigue and pain and inflammation in my body, I started to have a seated mindfulness practice, just to try and like slow down my brain at night, for example, so that I could just have a good night's sleep and not wake up at 2 or 3 in the morning stressing out. And the effects were immediate and really profound, in that I was able to see a big shift very early on. And as my energy started to come back, I thought, wow, this really works. This is amazing. And so I wanted to bring more mindfulness to other parts of my life. I'm like, I need this on a regular basis. But of course, as a very sort of busy, you know, type A type person, like, it was really hard for me to sit on a meditation cushion. And even to really get mindful in yoga, you know, I'd get so into the physical part of yoga that it was really hard for me to be really mindful a lot of the time. And so as my energy started to come back and I started to run more, I started to really recognize how my run was actually the perfect time of the day to practice that mindfulness. And so as I started to do that, well, then everything started to shift, and I was able to regain my health, to restore my sleep, to get my energy back, and just run like I used to, run at a normal level again. And so that set me on this path of really learning, practicing, living mindful running, and then in the last few years to share that practice with other runners that also want to make a shift in their running.
So when you the phrase mindful running. What does that mean for you?
Yeah, that's a great question because I've seen it, especially in the media lately, a lot of different ways of explaining mindful running or applying mindful running. But for me, it's really mindful running is the process of really tuning into your body while you run and being fully present uh, in your body and paying attention to those signals that it's sending you, so that you're not worried about external things. You're not worried about things like your pace or your mileage or how you look or if you're doing it right or how far you're going to run today. You're not worrying about the things you got to get done at the office when you get back, or things that happened earlier in the day. But you can truly be in the moment in that run where your mind is slowed down enough that you can just be more present in the moment, and also too really tuned in and listening. I've seen some descriptions of mindful running as a process of using the mind to overcome the body, to overcome fatigue, to block out those kinds of signals. But I am more of the mind that that information is there to be your guide, to help you make the right choices about how to manage your pace, your effort level, how far you're going to run that day, and all these other things that come into play, so that you can run better and actually enjoy the act of running a lot more.
So you touched on a couple of them. What are some of the main principles of mindful running that, if someone wanted to go out and attempt to start to practice this, what would they be what are some of the baby steps to starting it?
Yeah, baby steps. Absolutely. So it starts with paying attention to your posture. That's a great place to start because it's something that we can really tangibly control, and so becoming really mindful of how you're carrying your body, because one of the great benefits of running mindfully is to really pay attention to your body as you're moving through space, and thinking about landing softly with your feet, thinking about leaning forward with the body so that gravity can pull you forward, and making sure that you're standing up nice and tall, so that you're not hunched over or putting undue stress on the back and hips and certain parts of the body. So those simple posture changes can take a lot of the physical stress of running out of the equation, so that you can move with a lot more ease and flow. And the really, mindful running is about not using force to move your body through space, but to allow yourself to move forward. And when we have the right posture, gravity actually does a lot more of the work for us and pulls us forward. Another key thing that even beginners can start using right away is to really tune into your breath. Really pay attention to how you're breathing when you run, because the breath is the primary mechanism by which we control effort level. And I know a lot of runners think about pacing themselves in terms of, say, looking at their watch and thinking about pace per mile, and that's definitely been the school of thought when it comes to running. But for most of us, most of the time, what's much more relevant and much more effective as a training tool is your perceived effort. So how hard do you feel like you're running or exercising, rather than your actual how many minutes per mile you're moving, because there's so many factors that come into play in terms of how hard an effort is from day to day. Like one day you could run a 9-minute mile and it feels really easy, but then on another day you can run a 9-minute mile and it feels really hard. And there's a lot of factors that go into play there. So your breath, key indicator of that perceived effort level. If you're straining really hard, if you're breathing erratically, to maintain a pace, you're probably working too hard and you can back off. You know, for most of the time that we're training, we should be able to breathe easily. We should be able to talk while we run. We shouldn't be breathing so hard that those things are impossible. So, so number one, paying attention to posture, and number two is paying attention to your breathing. Is it controlled and regular, or is it rapid and erratic?
You know, and you have mentioned the you know, one day a 9-minute mile can feel great, and another day a 9-minute mile can feel really, really hard and difficult. And a lot of, and we talked about this before we went live, that a lot of the principles that you apply to mindful running are very similar to yoga principles. And that reminds me of one of the yoga principles. I know I've gone to classes and they're like, well, today your body may get into this position, tomorrow it may not, and then it may get there again next week. Like it was very much about respecting where your body was, and that it wasn't. I think that sometimes in running we get caught up in, have I regressed and I've gone backwards and now I need to overcome. And you know, can you speak a little bit to that, about the fluidity that we have with with our running?
Yeah, I'm really glad that you bring that up, because I feel like, especially in the media, we're bombarded by these messages that we should always be making progress. We should always be on this path of continuous improvement. But as we know, there's good days and there's bad days, and it's not a straight trajectory. And so to expect that from ourselves is not a very compassionate way to approach our fitness or our health. And so with a more mindful approach, we are being aware of those ebbs and flows, and how everything else that goes on in our life affects how we feel when we're out exercising. And that brings me back to what I had to learn after running that 100-miler, is it wasn't enough that I was just not running. I had all these other stressors that were keeping me in a very fatigued, exhausted state. And so for any of us on a day-to-day, week-to-week basis, we have things going on in our lives that are going to make us more tired, it's going to affect the quality of our workouts. It's going to affect our rate of recovery, how motivated we are, how you know, all these things, how much sleep we're getting, how well we're eating, whether or not we're hydrated, what else is going on. Are we feeling really stressed and overscheduled and always in a rush to get things done? Or do you really have the time that you need to look after yourself and your body to feel good? And that's where I think there's a lot of commonalities that I've seen between yoga and running. And what I learned through yoga, you know, I'm not a great yogi, but I've definitely been a hack at it for at least 15 years. And I always really resonated with the idea that that in yoga class we could really tune in to how the body is feeling, and that how deep you can go into a pose often had a lot to do with how well you mastered the breathing aspect of the pose, and how the breath was really critical to how far you could twist or fold or stretch and that sort of thing. And so when I started to think about how that applied to running, I discovered that it's not so different in a lot of ways, in that when you really paid attention to how you're breathing and how you're using your body, that had a great influence on how well your body's able to, say, perform, or in this case, you know, run. And so there's definitely a lot of parallels there.
You know, and as we talk about mindful running and mindfulness while running, are there ways in which you can incorporate this while you're still training to try to run your 2.5-hour marathon? How do you sort of balance that mindfulness approach to running and still wanting to have some sort of external goal that you want to achieve, and how do you blend those two?
Yeah, that's an awesome question because I kind of think of mindful running as a system and not as a training plan. And so a lot of my clients are actually following a training plan because they are working towards a specific goal, and that's great. And where the mindful running comes in is using mindfulness as the process by which you are constantly monitoring the quality of your training. And so it's this daily check-in process where when you tune in and you go for that workout, say you have a specific objective that you need to accomplish as part of your training plan, you make sure that that training quality is a high quality. It's productive. Because if you go into a workout and you are feeling really tired, and it's a struggle, say, to get through a set of intervals, the mindful running approach would say, well, you're probably not recovered enough from the last workout, and you should probably taper this one back a bit so that you are fully recovered for the next workout. And so it helps you make those on-the-fly training tweaks that are necessary to make sure that you maintain a high level of quality and also with it a high level of health. Because it doesn't matter how fit you are if you don't have a solid foundation of health. And health means high energy, that you are well recovered, that you're not putting yourself at risk for injury, whether it's an overuse type injury or like another running type of injury. But definitely, mindful running lets you make sure that what you're doing is always productive. Because what I see happen with a lot of runners or people that do all kinds of endurance sports is they feel that as long as they're following the training plan, they're doing the right thing. And unfortunately, I think it's a little confusing because training plans don't account for each individual's capacity for training stress. So if you think of your training as a type of stress, your job is to not only complete the workouts, but it's to make sure that you are always recovered from that stress. And so that's where the mindfulness can really be beneficial to anyone training at any level for an athletic event, making sure that they're always putting recovery first and health first so that they can adapt to that increasing training load.
It almost seems like if you make a little mental switch and think of it instead of the training plan, and I need to follow the plan, almost as this is my training guide, and so this is what I need to I want to try to accomplish, and then I'm going to put it into how my body's reacting to it.
Absolutely, yeah. That's exactly the right idea. And that's what I definitely mean when I talk to people about planning your training around your recovery. Yeah.
You also, I believe it was maybe in your ebook, which we'll talk about in a minute, that's available on your website, but in your ebook, there was a phrase you used about to zone in instead of zone out. And I kind of really love that and would love you to talk a little bit more about how you view that or incorporate that, because I think so many people are like, I'm just going to go and zone out and just not pay attention to anything, and mindful running is more about zoning, not making your grocery list, but zoning in.
Yeah. I think that was I feel that's an important distinction to make, because for a lot of us, going for a run, you could plug into the headphones and tune into some music and just be like, I'm just going to block everything out and just go for a run, and it can feel really cleansing to do that. Mm-hmm. But with mindful running, it's proposing your run as an opportunity to instead really check in on a deep level and be like, how am I doing today, and what is affecting me? Because I think it's a really important thing, especially in this modern day and age, we're exposed to so many different kinds of stressors that we become rather desensitized to the effects of all those different kinds of stress. And because a lot of these stressors are small but chronic, we're constantly exposed to them, that we don't always really notice how they're affecting us, how it's maybe affecting our mood, maybe making us just a little bit crabby, or affecting the body in terms of just keeping you at sort of a low level energy, or causing those energy dips in the afternoon where it's just really hard to get through the day. But if you really check in with yourself and use your run, for an example, as that opportunity to just really notice what's going on, where am I tight, where am I sore, do I feel light and energized and springy, or do my legs feel like lead and I'm just feeling really dragged down today? And if that's the case, well then what's going on? Like, what's weighing me down mentally and energetically? And when you're truly aware and honest with yourself about what is going on in your world, then you can then use your run to truly let it go and release that stuff that weighs you down, that may be affecting you. But the first step is to be conscious of the fact that it's there. And so that's kind of what I'm talking about when I say use your run as a chance to zone in instead of zone out.
That's, and I think that's can be so important, right? To check in with what is actually going on versus just assuming that it's something else, or that I'm tired because of the run is making me tired, when maybe there might be something else that might be making you tired as well.
Exactly.
And when you look at being mindful when you run, are there, so you're checking in with your body, and I'm thinking about meditation and some of the meditation that I've done, and my mind will wander. I mean, do you talk about, do the all where your mind ends up wandering off into something else that I have to do, and then you bring it back to where you are in the run, or is that a whole separate different thing?
Well, no, I think, as anyone knows who's tried running, say, a race or doing a seated meditation, it's really hard to maintain singular focus. And so, by all means, I don't think there's anyone that can stay truly mindful during every run for its entire duration, and I definitely don't. I definitely recommend that people start with their warm-up and their cool-down as sort of the mindful periods of their running practice. So for a lot of us, true, we don't necessarily have, say, a set period of this is my warm-up and this is my cool-down, but you can start to think of it that way, because the blocking out your run into different segments like that is actually really, really a good way to approach your training anyway, because the body needs to gradually move from being sedentary to being active. And then at the end of your run, you really help kickstart your recovery if you think about cooling the body down in the last 5 to 10 minutes of your run. So if you also make those times your mindful running practice, then it's a lot easier to swallow. It's a lot easier to get started, because if your run is going to last an hour, the idea of trying to stay very mindful and focused the whole time is a little daunting, and that would be, I think, too much mental work. So thinking about being mindful for those first 10 minutes where you're truly, I'm going to just like really tune in, see what my body's up for today in terms of a workout, or what I feel like doing, or where do I need to show myself a little bit more compassion, or just take a little bit more time to ease into this run, and go through those kinds of mental exercises in the beginning. And then at the end, check into yourself. How do I feel now that's different from how I was at the beginning of the run? And see what has shifted. Where are you more relaxed? Where do you feel a little bit more ease and flow in your body? And how, mentally too. Maybe there was some things really weighing on you at the beginning, but maybe it's just not such a big deal now. And I think it's important to spend a little bit of time at the end of a run to acknowledge those kinds of shifts, because these shifts are really actually physical. You know, as scientists are able now to really identify, because of the hormonal shifts that happen in the body and in the brain, that running, it really creates a very substantial physical shift that affects the brain and helps you feel a lot more positive and a lot more, can think more clearly at the end of a run than you can, say, before you ran. So it's worthwhile to check in with yourself and notice what's shifted, what you've been able to let go of or get clarity on, without necessarily having to ruminate on all those things during the whole run. But a lot of things will happen if you give yourself a chance to notice them.
Right. Yeah, you don't want your mindfulness to add stress to the run. That would defeat the purpose, right? I need to be mindful. You don't want that.
No.
That would just, so now if someone is listening or watching, or is just like, I've been feeling really unmotivated to run, or I feel like I've lost some pep. I know, you mentioned, posture and breath, and then checking in, at the beginning of your run and at the end of your run, are some things to start with. But what would be maybe some advice for someone who's like, gosh, running just has become the chore. I've lost sort of the pep and the motivation for it.
Yeah, absolutely. So many of the people that I talk to that reach out are feeling that way. And I can understand why that happens, because running does become a chore sometimes. It becomes something that we feel like we got to get done, or because we signed up for that race and we got this training plan, or you've made a commitment, and it stops being fun because it becomes about achieving an objective. And even if you are training for a race, when you can shift the intention of your run back to how you want it to make you feel today, then it's somehow a lot more liberating. There's a lot less pressure involved. You don't have to achieve a certain pace or distance or mileage or thing today. It can just be purely about, how do you want to feel? Do you just want to feel good and clear your mind and let go of some stuff, or get some fresh air, or whatever it is? Because sometimes it takes only 15 minutes to achieve that kind of thing. But when we make running out to be something that has to be epic or big or spectacular or fast or something else like that, some other form of measurement that's outside of ourselves, then it reduces the enjoyment factor. And so when you make it all about you and the rewards that you want to get from it today, it can be incredibly motivating and makes the run a lot more fun, and can really help restore that motivation.
And we talked about how you incorporate mindfulness into like a training program, or if you are striving for some external objective. For those people who are like, I don't want to get started, I don't necessarily really want to, maybe I'll do a 5K just because my friends are doing it, but as far as getting engaged and getting going, mindful running seems like a great place for those people to start or to restart if they've been away for a while.
Yeah, absolutely. It can be a great way to establish some really healthy training principles right out of the gate. So whether someone is returning to running after a long layoff or just getting started, it can give you the set of tools that you need to avoid so many of the common pitfalls that so many of us runners have all encountered, and I've been through all of them. So, no judgment, but a lot of us, it's easy to overtrain, or to develop an injury, or to not recover as well as we should, or all these things. And so running mindfully can give you the set of tools that you need to avoid those pitfalls, to create a running practice that is really sustainable, that's fun, that fits into your lifestyle, It's not really rigid. It is rewarding and can set you up on a path for lifelong running. Because my personal ultimate goal is to run until the end of my days, and a lot of my clients feel that way too. I was actually on the phone with a couple of ladies just last week who, at the end of the call, they emailed me a photo of a 97-year-old woman named Ida, and this one, she's been in a few magazines. She's definitely an incredible role model, but she's a sprinter, and she's 97 years old. And my clients, they said, we're in our 50s and we want to be like Ida. We want to run in our 90s. And, you know, I mean, that's the spirit. That's the spirit of, I'm going to take care of my body, and running is so enriching to my life in so many ways that I plan on doing it for decades and decades and decades. And that's when that's the true motivation, then all these other things we're doing today are just supporting that bigger vision of being a healthy runner and just taking care of our bodies and our minds and our spirits.
That's great. Yeah, and I want to be like Ida too. I definitely want to be like Ida. I think we all should strive to be like. I'm not a sprinter, but I want to be like Ida. You know, you mentioned some of your clients. So for people who have been, and I know you do retreats. You've got some amazing ones coming up this year. So for people who are interested in knowing more about mindful running, knowing more maybe about some of the services you offer, just give us a little overview of where to find you and some of the things that you're doing in 2016.
Sure thing. I'm really excited that this year we have more retreats than ever. We're doing 4 retreats in 4 countries, actually. And so I'm leaving in a few weeks for Costa Brava, Spain, where we have a running and wellness retreat there. But the next one we're doing is we have one in the Canadian Rockies, a mindful running retreat in the Canadian Rockies. And also a really exciting trip that I'm really excited about is that we're going back to Iceland this summer in August for a running and wellness retreat there. And that's a 7-day retreat along the southern coast, and we see just some of the most spectacular sights in Iceland with daily runs and mindfulness workshops and natural running form clinics, and it's a really amazing trip all around. And so that one is coming up in August, and then in October, we have the Moab Mindful Running Retreat, and that's a 4-day retreat in Moab, Utah, where it's a great place for people who've never run on trails but maybe want to get started. That's trail running and mindfulness, and it's going to be a really, really fun retreat, that one. So all those retreats and information about them are at runwildretreats.com. And then for people that maybe don't want to go on a retreat, they can still learn about mindful running through the online coaching programs that I offer, and either work with me one-on-one or in a group or on their own, and get all the tools and principles that we talk about at the retreats that they can work on at home and start implementing right away. And that is through my website, which is elinorfish.com, ELINORFISH.com. But also on that website, there's a lot of articles and free tools that people can use and download to learn more about how to get started with mindful running.
Yeah, and the ebook that you wrote is on there, and that's also a free ebook. So with some great starts and information on how to get started. One thing I want to just touch on too was I know that a lot of it is trail running. Your retreats are trail running, and trail running just sort of evokes mindfulness because you're out in nature and you're seeing different things. But you can do this when you're on the road as well and be mindful. Your location doesn't matter as much, correct?
Definitely, mindful running applies to running anywhere. Yeah, whether you're into road running or triathlons or off-road running or really any kind of endurance sport. But yeah, it doesn't have to be exclusive to trail running. I know for a lot of people, trail running is kind of a new thing that they might want to try, and that's why the retreats are a great opportunity to give it a try and really learn what it takes to transfer your running style from the road to the trails. But in terms of running mindfully and applying a lot of the principles that we talked about, they definitely work for road running, or even if you run mostly on a treadmill too, it can apply there as well.
Well, I'm doing a track workout on a treadmill on Thursday, so I'm going to apply these principles to my warm up and my cool down,
Awesome.
and see how those intervals go, which are dreadful to do on the treadmill, but you got to do sometimes. You got to do.
Wow. Awesome.
We always end, our last thing we always ask our guests to do is to, a woman who's watching this, what would be your words of encouragement or words of advice that you would want to share with women who are watching this?
Oh, I would definitely say that running is one of the healthiest things you can do. Running is one of the best things you can do for your body and for your mind. And it shouldn't hurt. It shouldn't make you tired. It shouldn't make you run down or make you stressed out about how to fit it in with the rest of your life. Because it really is one of the best gifts that you can give yourself, and it's one of the most natural things you can do. And so to anyone out there who is in any way discouraged or frustrated or disappointed with how their running is going, it doesn't have to be that way. And it can change, and mindful running can be a really powerful way to immediately turn things around and just make you really love running again. And so I would say, please come check it out and find out more about it.
Great. Elinor Fish, thank you so much for joining us. It was great talking with you and learning about mindful running, and my posture and my breath are the first things I'm going to think about. First thing I'm going to think about on my run tomorrow. So.
Great.
Thank you so much. Thank you all for joining us on Women in Power Active, and we will see you next time. Bye-bye.
Thank you.